The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You've always got time for short time.
Hey, it's Mario Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent Metcalf. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine. The one and only Chael Sonnen. And you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
Here at the Short Time Wrestling Podcast in the hotel lobby here at the Hotel Park in Novi Sad, Serbia. Jason Bryant with you, joined by one of the voices of the European Championships, John Cullen. He's that familiar Scottish voice you've heard at international wrestling the last several years. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jason. It's a real pleasure, first of all, to meet you and work with you, but also to get a chance to talk to everybody.
Yeah, and it's not been the first time we met. We met in Tashkent, all places, in 2014.
My goodness, yep.
What do you most remember about Tashkent?
Uzbekistan, I remember most probably hunkering over the toilet, and that was probably everyone's enduring memory of Tashkent.
Which way were you hunkering?
I wouldn't like to comment. I know it's a podcast, so you can't see what I'm doing, but yeah, it was, what is it they say, tough times don't last, tough people do, and I think that was the case with Tashkent. Good wrestling, good event, but my goodness, basic is the only way I could put it.
Yeah, Chuck Norris would have had a problem with the food there.
Don't force Chuck. You never force Chuck.
Yeah, because underneath Chuck Norris's beard is another fist. Anyway, so we've been joking around pretty much the last couple days, because if you've listened to the broadcast, that's basically what we've been doing. We haven't been calling much wrestling, but we've been throwing puns and inside jokes out left and right. But John, you've got a Taekwondo background. You've one of the voices of wrestling here with United World Wrestling. Let's talk about, how did you find yourself broadcasting wrestling?
You mentioned the Taekwondo. I started off as an athlete. I was the captain of the Great Britain team for Olympic Taekwondo, travelled the world competing, the World Europeans, Olympic qualifiers. I lost out in the semi-finals to go to Athens, and they asked me in 2008 to commentate for the BBC for my sport in Beijing, and started commentating from there. Loved it. Couldn't believe that I was getting the chance to do it. And the production company that I was working with, Eurosport, they started to cover karate, judo, wrestling, all the kind of combat sports. And I got a phone call one Thursday afternoon, 2011. Can you come to Istanbul to cover the Wrestling World Championships? I was like, okay, I know a little bit about it. I lived in Korea, trained in Korea, and the Korean Olympic team trained next door to our Olympic Taekwondo team. And I said, sure, when is it? And they said, Saturday.
And this is Thursday.
This is Thursday night. So I got the call Thursday night, it's Saturday, and I thought, okay, I always want to do the athletes justice. That's all I care about.
Because you were an athlete.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than when you hear a commentator and they can't get your name right, they don't know the rules. It's not fair. I mean, not everyone's an expert in the smaller sports, but if you're going to cover it, try and do your best. So I'm living in London, looking around to try and find a wrestling club in London. And Jason, you've been there for the Olympic Games. It's not the hotbed of wrestling that it is in the States.
And it's a very big, sprawling city. So people say, oh, you're in the city. You just going across town is an ordeal in London.
Exactly. And even more of an ordeal when you're trying to find a wrestling club. So locate one, an Iranian sounding name. So get there, and it turns out the guy was ex-Iranian national team, good athlete, of a height and build with me. And I've got an hour to try and learn what wrestling is. And
an hour to learn wrestling.
Exactly. And I've got no chance of learning the nuances or the style. So I said to him, do me a favour, just come at me. Just let's get on the mat and just come at me and let me know what it feels like. The full speed, the change of level, the change of tempo, the strength. Now this guy was maybe 3 or 4 years ex-athlete of my line and all that. And we did that for like an hour, and I asked him about the fundamentals, what goes through an athlete's mind when they're making these moves, making these decisions. And what amazed me was the level of thought that goes into such a physical sport, because when you look at it you just think, well, it's just two guys or girls, out-strengthen each other. So many decisions have been made all the time. So really enjoyed that. Didn't physically enjoy it, couldn't really walk the next day. flew to Istanbul.
Without being able, you're going to be sore because you haven't worked out probably that way.
I've never done those muscle grips in my life, ever. And
let's get on a plane for like 6 hours.
Exactly. So then fly to Istanbul, arrive. No one knows I'm coming because I'm the replacement commentator. No accreditation. I have to sneak into the venue on the day that the Turkish president, not the federation president, the president of the nation, is opening the competition.
And the 45-minute opening ceremonies.
Which everyone loves, you know. So I'm actually sitting underneath a bulletproof dais when I get into the stadium. So, because that's the level of the guy that's there. So anyway, 10,000 people in the stadium, huge crowds. It's now 6:55 in the evening. No co-commentator has arrived, and get the word in the ear. Right, John, you're going live now. Now, I've been reading the rules. I've been online. I've had a go at it, and I'm thinking, please let the co-commentator show up and let him know something. And then, of course, in rocks Danielle Robin, who I know you know well. Who was double Olympic silver medalist back in 1856, I think it was. So.
I think it was
68.
Was it 706 BC? No,
yeah.
We get Danielle. Yeah. I think it was 68.
I think he beat
mistaken.
Buddha in the semis, and then Jesus beat him in the final. I think it was that long ago.
Jesus was tough at that weight.
What would Jesus do? That's always what I ask myself.
Low ankle.
Exactly.
Leg lace.
He always wins in the end. That's actually. I'm a Christian, and one of the things that I like about wrestling is the honesty of it. On the mat, there's no hiding place, and I like that. That's why I like combat. There's no room for ego. You win and lose in front of people in the most basic form, you know. So I appreciate that. But back to the original story. In comes Danielle at 6:57. We're on live at 7. Hello, I am Danielle. I'm your co-commentator for this evening, and I'm like, okay.
Your French accent for a Scotsman's pretty good.
It wasn't bad. He's actually here with us, Danielle. So, no. So yeah, it was just then a blur of 3 hours of mind-boggling stuff. What's his name? Akgul, the big heavyweight
from
Turkey.
For Greco or freestyle?
Freestyle.
Oh yeah, Taha Akgul.
Taha Akgul. So he's on. He's on today, actually.
By the time you listen to this, folks, or if you're listening to it right away, you may or may not have known him to have won or lost the finals.
Okay, so with that little spoiler alert, he was there. That was the first person that I saw, and I thought, oh my goodness, these are men mountains. These are actually enormous people. And I thought, this guy's going to be slow. He's not going to have any footwork. Wasn't expecting anything, but just the gross athleticism. It's not unlike yourself, Jason, getting up the stairs to the commentary box.
Yeah, it's what you don't know is the amount of sweat pouring off of me is from the stairs from the bottom to the top. Not a 3-hour workout and climbing the stairs.
Not gross athleticism, just
gross.
Exactly.
It's that type of rapport, you know. A guy 3 years, see him once a year, he can throw gross strokes at you. It's cool. It's cool.
That's where we're all from.
So when we get that situation, and I remember that World Championships. There was the Turks were great. You had the PA announcer who was screaming, which I don't quite do that type of style of PA. But then that was also your first introduction to the Iranians.
And the Iranians were unbelievable. I was so impressed because inside Taekwondo as you guys call it in the States, Iran is like number 1, number 2 team. So I've been to Iran like 4 times. I've fought there, world champions. I know what the crowd are like. It's mother, father, brother, sister, cousin, uncle, cat, dog, anyone, and they're all there, and they're all coordinated, and everyone supports it, and it was like a soccer stadium, to be honest.
So you were actually familiar with the Iranian wrestling?
I was familiar.
So you've seen that before, so that didn't come as a surprise.
The level of support that they put into their national team athletes, particularly in combat sport, wasn't a surprise. The fact that there was a 10,000 capacity stadium full of wrestling fans was a major surprise, because I was not prepared for that. Because when you're not part of a sport, you don't know that inside the sport there's a huge following. Outside the sport you think, oh, wrestling, or that's judo, or that's taekwondo, or whatever. We don't have those type of crowds in taekwondo. We don't.
Even in Korea?
No chance. The World Championships are in Korea this year, and if you get 2,000-3,000, you'll be doing well. That's including the athletes. So wrestling's got a huge fan base.
So we've been talking back and forth about the development of how you understand a sport, liking a sport, and then trying to sit there and be like, okay, I've got to be the voice of this. How much have you tried to learn, and what are the things since that initial, hey, you got to be on a plane in 2 days to learn how to do things over the past 6 years? This is not new for you anymore. How much have you learned about the sport?
That's really interesting, because what I did when I was then at the World Championships was try to ask as many questions as possible of wrestlers, coaches, athletes. Spent a lot of time in the warm-up area in the morning sessions. So the next day after that first introduction to the finals, I was there at like 8 o'clock in the morning all day in the holding area, looking at what they're doing, trying to learn physically what it is, what it's like, and then just talking to people. Tim Foley was very helpful as well, who I know you know well. So I spoke to him a lot about the terminology, because each nation seems to use different terms to describe different things, and I thought, I don't want to just be saying something that people go, what the hell is this guy talking about? So trying to use terms that other people were using without being like a sports creep, like just I'm going to steal their terms and then pretend that I know what I'm talking about. I don't pretend that I know what I'm talking about. I appreciate what the wrestlers are trying to do. I try and communicate through my perception of that, using terms that people might not be perfect for what they would get, but they'll grasp what I'm trying to convey. I think that's the intention anyway. So yeah, a lot of time in the practice room, a lot of time studying it. Then obviously London Olympic Games came up, so I was covering it for Olympic Broadcasting Service there.
Hence your shirt that you're wearing right now, which
I
you
wish
cannot
it was
see.
I know, we'll get a little photograph of it if you want. So 3 Olympics later, 3 World Championships later, 1, 2, 3, 4, I can't remember, however many, and all the Europeans in between. And yeah, I enjoy it. I like going on the wrestling website and watching Big Move Monday and checking out what people are writing, and it doesn't consume me, but it holds my interest for longer than just being in the stadium.
What's one thing that you've been able to draw from your experiences in your preferred sport of Taekwondo or Taekwondo?
Well,
however you prefer to say it.
Taekwondo, tomatoes, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Famines. No, that's the other guys. Yeah, so what have you drawn from those experiences that are similar that you've been able to carry over, so it's not just a complete what?
Well, that's, again, an interesting part of it, is that travelling, making weight, getting the draw sheet, figuring out who you're going to fight, working on a game plan, being behind the scenes with your coach going, what are we going to do to counter their strengths? What are we going to do to let them use their strengths so that we can play against them? So all of those things, you have them innately because you practice them for a decade or more at the top level. So when I see someone coming in to compete, I know that they're carrying all that with them onto the mat. They don't just show up. So what I like to think is I've got a compassionate eye as to what they're trying to do. The worst thing that I hear from commentators, well, he shouldn't have done that. Why did he do it? That was really stupid. As they sit there, 1,500 pounds overweight, eating a pizza, going, well, I wouldn't have done that. The reason you wouldn't have done that is because you're not in the national team and no one asked you. So no one cares.
So you're telling me the rest of the week I shouldn't say what the heck kind of call?
No, I don't mean you. You've served your time. You're Hall of Fame announcer. You know the sport inside out. You wrestled yourself. I don't mean it from that regard. I mean football commentators, anyone that has the microphone, it doesn't make you the expert. It just means you've got the microphone. That's all.
Now, when it comes to that preparation, talking about having the microphone, preparing, knowing what the athlete...
And it doesn't really matter. Their work level is consistent. Our work level is required at the moment when the person wins. We've got to be fresh for that. So, I like to go to the gym. I like to work out. I like to get some fresh air. Take a rest. That's so important, so that we had the situation yesterday. When you come into the broadcast and your energy is through the floor, the only thing that can pick you up is the wrestlers that are doing the work.
Yeah, because that's exactly what happened for folks who are understanding when we're talking about day 3 finals. Both John and I were kind of zapped because we had the first day was high energy. Yeah. The second day was kind of the wrestling didn't really give us that energy that we wanted. And it was just a long day yesterday. And we get there and we're just like, ugh. And then all of a sudden we get a quick fall to start things out and we perk right up. But another thing that with the preparedness, and you're talking about staying fresh, staying healthy and that type of thing, is we're in a 6-day grind here.
Yeah.
You can't
You don't peak too soon.
Yeah, you can't crush everything day one, because by the time we get to Greco on day 5 and 6, we're going to have nothing left in the tank.
Yeah.
So how do you, in situations with broadcasting championships and other sports, how similar is a 6-day tournament? I mean, is this something that's unique to wrestling through your experiences, or how do other combat sports, if you've done Stage Air World Championships, are they this long?
That's a good question as well. Wrestling has the most depth and the most amount of weight categories. So our World Championships are over 5 days. Boxing is over 6 days, but it has less weight categories. And the boxers will only fight a maximum of twice on that day, just because of the nature of the combat. So you'll see the same boxer 2 and 3 days to advance. So you talked about concentrated excellence. It's concentrated intensity within wrestling, and you have to be... The biggest danger, I think, in commentary is when you try to be above that. I'm going to control what's going on. I'm going to tell you as the viewer what's happening. You're not. You're there appreciating and filling in the blanks for the viewer. We've all done it. When you want to do a good job, you can tell you and I both like to talk. And
I hadn't noticed that.
Exactly. So when you then feel that it's a radio broadcast and you've got to say everything that's happening at all points so that people know that you're trying, that you care about this, they don't want to hear your voice the whole time. They can see what's happening, you know? So
I did my best.
But a lot of the times, less is more when it comes to commentating. That's what I've found, because you and I have both done the same roles, the lead and the co-commentator. Now, I could never do the co-commentator for wrestling because I don't know it well enough to analyse what's happening. I can cue it up as to what's happening. So it's finding that balance. And one of the things that most important to me, people think that commentating is just talking. The biggest thing is listening. Because if I'm not listening to what you've said and then I repeat what you've just said, or you've asked me a question and I answer something else, the people at home are going, what is this? That's why I like to make little jokes. So I'll pick up something that you've said and try and use it as a bridge to get to the next bit of action, you know?
Yeah, because those who are listening have heard a rather spirited commentary, and I want to say that I haven't had this much fun on a broadcast in a long time. And
it's nice.
This is considering this is the first time you and I have ever worked together. Now, we've known each other for a couple of years, but when you're put into a broadcast position and getting to the point is neither of us knew we were going to be here. I knew I was going to be here. I was expecting to call the tournament the entire time, the whole day by myself, like I've done in the past. Yeah. And you're here expecting to do the TV like you've done in the past. And
medals and finals.
What? So I'm doing a couple semi-matches during the morning session. Then we're coming together for the finals, for the stream, and for the television, which... there might be people in English-speaking parts of the world that are hearing us, which kind of baffles my mind a little bit. But when you talk about when you work with Danielle Robin for the first time, when you're put into a situation where you have a co-commentator that you've never worked with, sometimes there's an instant rapport like I think we got, and sometimes you've got to work through it. What are some things that you have to do no matter the situation to make sure that you're on point with your color commentator?
You can never compete with your color commentator because there is a competition on the mat that the people are enjoying. They don't need to hear a competition between you and them. So I don't need to be right at any point in the broadcast. So the pratfalls, the stupid jokes, the asking questions that an idiot would ask.
The softballs.
Which I'm good at, you've got... That's my own sexual health issue, but that will get resolved over time. I think that goes back to Tashkent, but that's another story. No, it's...
Feel the burn.
Exactly. But that rapport comes from trust, and that trust comes from I don't need to dominate what's going on here because the action is on the mat. We are the soundtrack to the action. So... if you're blessed, as we have, as you say, to have that rapport and that trust, you're golden. If you have, and I've had it, co-commentators that have, won the Olympics and then want to compete with you during the broadcast. So you're, the closer part. Oh, there's a great gold medal. Da 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 da. The commentator does that, and then the other guy does the detail, and this is what's going on. When you get an athlete that wants to establish themselves on TV, they'll just go right over the top of you. And the only thing that I found to do was to just let them talk.
Because ultimately it's the producer and the production company that's going to make the hiring. So let's compare the level of pressure, because you said you worked 3 Olympic Games. Yep. I've worked 2 in various capacities. OBS. Talk about pressure-filled to the protocol. The protocol. Sports presentation, working with OBS. How much different is working this event or European Championships or World Championships that's not under the OBS flag than working for the Olympic Broadcasting Service?
It's enormous. I am a total goofball at all points in my life. I love to laugh. I love to joke around. OBS, it's like...
We have no sense of humor because we can't afford to.
You're commentating to a Sunday school.
That's not a bad thing.
No, but you're commentating to a minister or a Sunday school or a Bible class, or it's straight-laced, gentle comedy at a maximum because they don't want to offend anyone. Now, when you stray into making jokes, you can offend people if you get it wrong. So it's much more straight-laced. BBC...
Vanilla ice cream, Reader's Digest.
That's what it is. As straight-laced as you can.
No sprinkles.
No extra stuff.
For every sprinkle, I must kill you.
Exactly. So, but you can still work it in there. You can still make it light and make it enjoyable. So it's a different dynamic. I enjoy it for sure. It's a pressure because Olympic Broadcasting Service dictate in the contract that you have to be able to cover 3 sports because you're there for the duration minimum. So if I can do taekwondo, I can do boxing, I can do wrestling, then they always drop in judo on you as well, and you're like, okay, and it's going to be karate for Tokyo. So it's a lot.
It's a demonstration sport.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of biogs, you've got a lot of coaches, you've got a lot of research, and it's probably similar to the way that you would pitch the stadium announcement. You have to know everything about everybody but not say it unless required, and you have to be mildly entertaining without crossing over into being the annoying guy that's shouting in the stadium. You know what I mean? So it's probably a question that I would have for you is, how do you find, or how do you negotiate the difference between the stadium announcement style and the commentary style?
They're 2 different traits, 2 different tasks, but I think the knowledge has to be there in both ways. But I like, to your point earlier, to be the lead guy, you don't have to know everything on everybody. That's what the color guy is for, the number 2, the co-announcer. But I've found that the styles are various different. I think people that listen to me here on the podcast, they know that and they hear me in a PA, they know the voice, but it's not quite the same inflection and tone.
Sure.
You can't go into a PA job trying to do it like a commentator.
No chance.
And vice versa. So I'm not going to be sitting there on our broadcast night, and that's 2 for Ukraine. You know, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You do that because you're waiting to play off of the reverberation and the acoustics in the arena to really get that pop with the crowd. So. And
do you miss that instant? It's like a comedian delivering a good joke. You get that. You feel the
there is
energy.
That instant gratification. I'll say this: controlling, like at the NCAA championships, controlling 18,000 people with the sound of your voice.
Nice,
it's freaking cool. It's freaking cool. Okay, now you're not controlling them. Actually, that's probably the bad.
Guiding it.
To kind of being, like I said, being a soundtrack, like you said, being a soundtrack. So when there's a big takedown by Jaden Cox or something, and the place goes nuts.
Yeah.
And you're over the top, and then it's just that little bit of pop. It sounds like it's important, so that's kind of what I like. But with the broadcasts, like last night, we were with Connecticut's Vili got 5'd, and which beyond further review, it doesn't look like he got 5, but it was 4.5. Landed on his face.
Yeah.
So, but look at that. It's like, wow, it's one of these things where I became a fan of that moment, whereas I wasn't explaining the tactical issues. Like, oh, he's lifting, he's going to get the 5. No, it's like, go. It's like, I didn't have to say a word for you to know that was powerful, but I'm believing that there's probably fans at home that are doing the same thing I am, because that's where the commentary is. You have that ability to be, as in my role here compared to your roles, I can have that because I'm like, yes, I know exactly what's going on, whereas you're looking at it. How are you looking at that situation?
Well, you've got to let everyone else enjoy that situation, as opposed to, I mean, I'm the same. I'm sitting with my mouth open going, what the hell did that guy just do? He was supposed to come in here and wipe the floor with everybody.
You just slammed the Olympic champion on his head.
Yeah, and he's just turned the tables on him. But it's not my space to say that, so I've got to sit there and go, this is incredible. But at what point do you... It's a difficult one, because you become a fan as well at that point as well. And if you don't, then you shouldn't be talking about it. Because if I'm not enjoying it, people can hear it.
when do you look at something? I mean, how amped up do you get for these type of events? It's like, okay, I get to do the European Championships. It's like I'm excited to be here because 1, it's Serbia. 2, it's the Europeans. Yep. 3, I just love broadcasting wrestling. I like being around wrestling and seeing new things. Is there? I mean, how do you get that feeling every time you get an assignment? You're like, oh yeah, all right, I get to go here. I mean, explain what that's like from the time you get the email, the call, be like, hey, we're going to need you in, Montserrat.
It's exciting. Yeah, well, I mean, that type of thing.
We won't be going to Montserrat, by the way.
Unless invited.
Would be great.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it is so much about we're normal everyday people, and to be paid to travel around the world to talk about other world-class athletes, to learn from good people, to experience different cultures, it's a blessing. It's an absolute God-given blessing, and it's something that your wife or partner or family, when they find out you're going, they share in that as well. Oh, you get to go to the Olympic Games. I know that was experience for you for London or Rio. So you get a buzz from it every time.
I mean, my kids are named after it.
Well, there you go. So it's pivotal in people's lives. It's a big part of your identity. And no, I love it. I absolutely enjoy it. I try not now to do too much. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like being an athlete. When you were younger, you were like, let's go to every competition, let's do every training session. And then eventually you just get tired and it doesn't quite work. But when you start to pick and choose the kind of major events, you peak for them. And that's what I like to do with the commentary as well, because it's actually a big thing to me to be asked back again. I mean, you can get asked back in your own sport, but not in your own sport for someone to say, could you come back again and do that? That's a nice compliment. Even if it's just because it's convenient and, whatever. It's still nice. They didn't go, Jesus, don't get that guy again. Keep him away from here, So, to answer your point, you do get that excitement of I'm going to the event, and you build up to that and you do your preparation, and it's cool. It's like the World Championships coming in Paris. Who gets that in their life to say, number 1, you get to go to Paris, number 2, you get paid to go to Paris, number 3, you get to watch world class sport, and number 4, you get to be on television doing your commentary. I mean, what more do you want?
You're not a social media heavy guy.
No.
So some people I tend to live on social media a lot of places, and when you're a broadcaster and you live on social media, that is that line of where the criticism is coming from almost immediately.
That's probably why I'm not on it.
Yeah. So how do you handle that from let's compare say criticism you may get from your own sports community.
Yeah.
Where you're an athlete, you actually know this.
Sure. Compared
to when you're out of your element and you're receiving. How do you handle those levels of criticism?
It's tough. I'm not lying. It's painful because you don't want to. I only want people to enjoy it.
It's never intentional.
No, you're trying to enjoy it. You want everyone else to enjoy it. You do your preparation. You give it your best. But like an athlete or a coach or a referee, you will make mistakes, and that's the beauty of elite sport, is that it beats the ego out of you in front of people. So if you're wrong and people have called you on it and you say, no, that was wrong, I got that wrong, made a mistake, so you don't do it again. That's the same as an athlete or a coach. You try to improve. So, but it does hurt for sure. If people are not happy with what you've done, you think, I didn't want that, I wanted it to be fun. And that again is the
you can't force it.
No, but that's the grey area of, I like to have a laugh and a joke as you do, but I would hate to think people would see that as not taking it seriously. You're taking it seriously, but also you're trying to keep people entertained, because you've got a responsibility to the athletes, but you've also got a responsibility to people at home. And if you can make it a bit lighter, then that's what you do.
Yeah, we both have done the lighter side a little bit. I know with the internet, and you can probably you can afford to be a little more flexible with some of the I don't want to say sketch comedy because we're not quite the kids in the hall by any means, but let's just say like the balloon incidents. Yeah. So the opening ceremony, for those who are unaware, so opening ceremony is the first night. These kids let off all these helium balloons to the top of the arena. Now they're still sitting in top of the Spend Sports Center. Over the last 2 days, they have been slowly losing their helium and falling down. And during the finals, I think one night there were 3 different sets of balloons. Okay, we can't really ignore that because the people, it's what's happening off screen starts to come on screen. I mean, how do you keep your balance? I guess we both know how to do this, but from those listening, how do you think we should keep our balance in that situation from getting completely off the rails and talking about balloons for a half hour? Oh, by the way, Ryan Sandberg got hit in the head. I think he's dead.
Exactly. Well, that can happen, and that will happen. That is exactly. You'll feel deflated. No, that's the balance of trying to.
Case in point.
You've got to try and look at what are people seeing. If they can't see it, we can't talk about it. If they can see it, we have to talk about it. We can't just pretend that this is not happening. It's farcical. And it's the great contrast of these incredibly tough people grunting, gnarling, ready to rip each other's head off, and then comes nice little balloons dropping down into the stadium, and
right on top of the referee.
You know what I mean?
Who then takes her attention away from the wrestling to get rid of these balloons. So.
Who also, when you think about the referee, what the hell is in their mind? They're going, I've been to the seminars, I've done my coaching, I've done my practice.
There's nothing in the book about falling balloons.
Balloon protocol was missed out.
Balloon protocol.
So it's missed out. But also, by the same token, on day one, you've got the opening ceremony that starts, the match is supposed to start at 7 o'clock, and we've got 12 and a half minutes of traditional Serbian dancing.
Stretch.
Yeah, you've got to stretch it out, and everyone at home knows you're stretching it out, but you can't. The thing that I've learned from other co-commentators, you can't say anything offensive. I've heard people say stuff about people in the crowd, or, well, I don't know why she's wearing that, or look at the size of his ass, or whatever. And you're like, you can't.
I have no room to speak in that particular department because I dress terribly and I've got a huge rear end.
I've got nowhere to go from there. So moving on from your ass, which I did last night, but that's another story. That's why we're as close as we are. No, it's a balance. It's a balance.
No, when the elephant in the room, I guess, with you is you're Scot.
Yeah.
You've got a thick Scottish accent.
I do.
Which, from an American standpoint, people look at it, because we kind of snub our nose a little bit in some respects at soccer and in European broadcasting, because I don't know if it's just what it is. We beat the Brits, so haha.
Thank God you did. I wish someone would come back and do it again. Get rid of them.
I don't think anybody of us is sitting there going 1776, bro.
Exactly. Well, I would be on your side. Don't worry.
So, but when you deal with the accent, and this is something, as a Scot, this is beyond just broadcasting. Sure. You deal with this,
in daily life,
and it's a point of contention. How do you deal with people saying, "What's this guy doing calling wrestling?
Exactly.
This is not a wrestling. He's not from a wrestling country."
I'm really glad you asked that, because I'm a sports commentator who happens to have a Scottish accent. So the content of what I'm saying, if it's good, and this is not to be big-headed, but if you get asked to do lots of these major events, it means that you can do the job. But it's a different thing, so people's ears go, what the hell is this? What accent's that? And it maybe
I didn't switch on Man U and Arsenal.
Exactly. So it clashes with people with what they're expecting. So you're instantly setting yourself up as the different guy, and then if the stuff that you're saying doesn't make sense to them, it's 2 marks against your name before you've even started. So, but the wider point about differentiating based on accents, that's a slippery road to go down, because even in the BBC at the Olympic Games, I was the only Scottish voice doing the sports, and I've a Glasgow accent, which is not the Edinburgh posh accent. I don't have that. I've got a real normal street voice that you don't hear on TV. So even when I'm in the UK and people hear my accent,
they know exactly where you're from.
Yeah, they know I'm from Glasgow, and they're also like, who the hell's that Scottish guy? So it's not just American, but I think I'm probably undoing my point here by talking absolute rubbish, but as long as what you're saying makes some kind of sense. But it does, it's a form of discrimination is too hard a word, but it's a kind, not intentional, but people stereotyping. They're pushing you away from them to say, well, you don't sound like me, so you must be really stupid. What happened to that accent?
Southern accent's the same way in the States.
Exactly.
Are you less intelligent because you sound like this?
That's
I might have gone to Harvard, but I might sound like this.
That's exactly it. So you then go into real deep level thoughts of...
For the record, I didn't go to Harvard.
Well, but you're from the South. No, it's a little joke. No, but it's just because you were playing a banjo a minute ago. That was all it was.
Yeah, but don't even talk about the sheep last night.
That's a good
back
point.
on track. I don't want to go down that route.
Back. No, but the accent, has got me lots of different jobs because it's different, and I know that it's stopped me from getting other jobs because it's different. So, for example, I'm a big tennis fan, but my voice doesn't suit tennis because I sound as if there's either a drug deal or a murder has happened when I'm talking.
What?
A murder.
Exactly.
At
a
murder.
Burger King.
There's been a murder at Burger King, or there's been a murder at Burger King, and the murderer was wearing a purple jacket. So if I had to speak like that, people have no idea what I'm saying. So I understand.
So saying Martina Navratilova would not be a great career move?
Well, it depends. It depends what you're saying about Martina Navratilova, because she's had a few moves of her own. But
tennis reference on short time. That's never happened before.
It was ace. Anyway,
see, that's what you're dealing with listening to the Euros.
You serve them up, I'll hit them. That's all it is.
Just make sure nobody's at fault.
Or makes a racket. Anyway. So we could get lost.
I get nothing left.
No, I know. Unless you knew someone called Annette, which you could have brought with you. But no, it's just a very long answer, cut short. We can't differentiate. We cannot pick on other people because they sound different from us. If they're talking absolute rubbish, fair enough. But because it sounds different to my ear, that's more on them than it is on me.
When you look at the course of, well, first of all, what do you do from day-to-day life? I mean, you're not a full-time broadcaster 100% of the time. What is your day job? I
am a university lecturer in international sport and media. So that's what I do at university for the last 4 years.
Which school?
At Glasgow Caledonian University in Scotland. So, and also in London. So I do 2 lecturing there. Finishing my PhD, God willing, in October. I'm trying to anyway. And yeah, do that, and also run my own Taekwondo centre in Glasgow. So like a community centre for kids. Try and take very violent young people and make them better at being violent. So that's basically
within a rule set.
Exactly.
Yes, so you can kick this person in the face.
Yeah, that was what first drew me to it.
Only if you're wearing a gi.
Exactly. Be in the gym, please, rather than the street. So yeah. It's a full life. I always say I've got 3 jobs that combine to make 1 salary. That's just the way it is. So,
I agree with you there. I think my tax accountant saw probably 22 W-2s and 1099s come through. When you look at some of the places you've been, and Serbia so far has been outstanding. How does one, what's the best place you've ever been outside of your home country to cover an event, whether it be Taekwondo, whether it be tiddlywinks or wrestling?
Okay, so many. It's hard to think of.
Well, maybe one that surprised you is like surprisingly good.
Iran was great. Covering the Taekwondo championships there. People are so friendly. I like my food, as you do as well. Lovely food, lovely people. Tehran was really open.
So as a resident of the United Kingdom, how is getting into Iran? Because in the United States, it's
problematic. Yeah,
very problematic.
Yeah, it was problematic for a number of years, but sport's almost a kind of bubble on its own. I know you guys did before with like Iran against the USA. I think it was in New York to try and save.
The thing is, I think getting Iranians to the United States
is easier than the other way around.
It seems to be that way. Yeah.
But these are all interesting things, and your initial point was that surprised me as a place to be. Probably the nicest place. I mean, I know you've been to Azerbaijan as well. I had a great time at the European Games in Baku. Of course,
I went 10 years ago, so I understand it's been completely different. It was 2007.
Yeah.
The whole city was really under construction because they were trying to get an Olympic bid. They were putting themselves up to be a bid city. And Brandon Slay, who was one of our national team coaches for the United States for a long time, he said it was completely different. We went over there for the Golden Grand Prix. So Baku is on my list of places to go back to just to compare.
To compare the two, yeah. I mean, all places like that and everywhere in between. I've been, as I say, really blessed to travel all over the world. So many places to try and think of.
How many countries have you been to? I mean, how many passports have you rolled through?
I've had, you get those little extra pages that you have to stick into the passport.
We can't do that anymore in the States.
We don't do that in the States anymore. So,
used to, but no. Yeah, I had to buy the extra thick one.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty much expiring in Brazil, so I figured I'd get a new one with a much better picture that didn't make me look like the guy from To Catch a Predator. Any guy from To Catch a Predator.
Well, yeah, there's a list. But yeah, it's similar to yourself, just I couldn't tell you how many countries I've been to. I don't know. It's that many. 10 years as an athlete, travelling every month to somewhere. and then as a coach, and now as a commentator. Commentary now, I'm trying to do it every 2 months, every 6 to 8 weeks, so that you can have a home life, and not just going after everything. But everywhere in Europe, a lot of the US, South America, Africa not so much. I've been to Africa a couple of times, but I wouldn't put that in my bucket list to go back. I have to say, Africa and India, people were lovely, but nah.
Now, South Africa, I definitely want to go back to.
Well, I've never been there.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I didn't go there for wrestling. Maybe Commonwealth Games, they'll be in Australia in 2018. Maybe they can put them back in South Africa sometime soon. And so, that's another thing. Explain a little bit about what you know about the Commonwealth Games and that infrastructure, because people look at that and be like, what? Yeah, because I don't know anything about the royal family, the Commonwealth. I don't know any of that. Explain that to a layman.
I mean, I'm gonna have to stand up and warm up here, because
this has nothing really to do. This is just my own curiosity.
No. I have total disregard for the royal family and everything they stand for. So basically, the Commonwealth Games is the murdering and pillaging competition left over from all the countries that they took over. So every country that they liberated, dominated, and then indoctrinated has now a sports event. So it's like a big school sports day to celebrate the fact that the King and the Queen wrecked the planet. That's my take on the Commonwealth Games. So that might not be what they put on their promotional materials, but
yeah, I probably won't be bringing that up when they're asking me to be PA announcer for wrestling next year. So we look at the world travel, the broadcasting, the preparation, the various people you meet, and the various problems that exist within all these international federations. Because let's be honest, the problems we are experiencing within what used to be FILA to United World Wrestling, and the growing pains and the overturning of the power, that's not unique.
No, far from it.
What are some other situations where you've seen comparisons, just to let people know that we're not alone in our fight to try to correct our sport in a lot of ways?
Far from alone, and you're actually much further along the curve than most. I think the Olympic status shock that you guys had, after 2012, I think it's been good. I think the new president, Lalovic, isn't it? Nenad Lalovic? Da. So he's made a big difference. I think he's cleaned house, got rid of a lot of the old corruption, maybe replaced it with some new corruption, but that's another podcast for you, I don't know. But
I'll wait till the check clears.
Exactly. It's inherent in human nature. If whatever there is, I always say that when you're on the mat, it's at its most honest. The further away you get from the mat, it gets progressively less honest. And by the time you end up in the stands, when the VIP lounge is bigger than the warm-up area, you have a problem. And that's what you find with most combat sports. They spend the money on the junkets, the holidays, they don't see a match, they have no idea who's wrestling who's fighting who. I have no time for that.
Was that similar in
boxing,
taekwondo,
karate, judo? It seems to be combat sports. That's the only one that I've got the experience of. But I think what happens in combat sports is that you train so much to deal with conflict and create conflict and practice conflict that when you take off your singlet and put on your UWW blazer, your brain is still conditioned to conflict. So when you go into these situations, the backbiting and the politic is even worse, because people still want to have that prestigious position. And the accreditation it's an unbelievable phenomenon for me, is that the accreditation on day one, it's like the holy grail to get this accreditation, and what part of the stadium can you get into, and then after the event's finished, it's just left on the sideboard somewhere. So to answer your original point, wrestling is far from perfect, but it's, for me, they're making great strides. They really are. And in terms of levels of corruption, in Taekwondo, people have been arrested and put in jail within the last 6 months for stealing, theft, corruption, all sorts. Boxing, I mean, come on, boxing couldn't be any more corrupt if it tried. It's almost part of the rules. Well, it's just that you have to cheat. You look at Rio.
I can't. I haven't been able to watch boxing since 1993.
Well, you look at, all the way back to 88, where Roy Jones Jr. in Korea got cheated there, to Joseph Conlon at 2016 in Rio. 8 judges were sent home the day after his fight. The Irish kid that got beat, as saying in air quotes. So when people are getting money to make decisions within an Olympic sport, can't have that. And I think that wrestling's done a good job to clear house with that. Is it perfect? I don't know.
Bringing it back into what we do here, do you think the fact that they've added more streaming, they're working with currently Track Wrestling in the United States, they've had a good contract with Livestream, the last 3 or 4 years, there's really been a push for even the African championships, the Indian championships coming up in New Delhi, the Pan Am's going on right now in Brazil. How important do you think that is from a fan base? So coming from a Taekwondo standpoint, if those events are streamed, do you think that your sport is stronger? How much stronger do you think wrestling is because this information, this event is being put out to thousands of people? There may not be thousands of people in the arena, but you log on, watch the stream, there's 2,000 people watching at any time of the day, depending on where it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of it. We think of them as minority sports, but if I give an example of Taekwondo, there's like 45 million registered Taekwondo practitioners in the world governing body. That's a lot of people. So to try and, we're putting it on TV, we're putting it online to try and attract other people. No, don't. Just play to your own crowd, play to your own market, satisfy the demand that they have for it.
I don't think those 2,000 people that are watching Matt B today are just discovering it because they happen to be on livestream.com at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly right. So you play to your own audience and you take care of them and they'll stay with you and they'll enjoy it. And if you, on occasion, like every 4 years when the Olympics happens, because you've done the live streaming, because the referees are used to TV cameras and the athletes are used to the protocols, when the Olympics happens, it's more natural. So you've got a chance to make a positive imprint as to, what your sport actually is, so that people carry that in their head of, oh, that's quite good. If it was on, I wouldn't switch it over. That's all you can hope for if you're a minority sport. If you put it on and go, what the hell, I'm putting this off. But if you can catch people, their attention, and that I do think that a lot of that comes from practicing from the live streams, practicing from broadcasting, it makes the whole sport better and holds everyone to a higher standard. Because if it's online and it's been recorded, you can't cheat.
Yeah, because it only
someone's going to see it.
Takes one flub to end up on Deadspin.
That's exactly.
John Cullen, anything you want to add here as we get ready? We're day 4. We're in a break. We're going to head back and call some finals by the time you listen to this, wherever you're listening to it. I want to appreciate you for listening, but any words of advice for those listening is say, hey, just quit making fun of my accent.
That was me. I mean,
wanker.
Exactly. The nice drop of the word wanker on a podcast. I like it. No, it's a pleasure to be involved. A pleasure to watch the athletes at their best and to meet good people. That's the biggest thing. And for as long as it continues, I'm happy doing it. If it stops today, I couldn't ask for any more. You know yourself, when you tick off those bucket list items, I'm satisfied. And I hope that people enjoy the rest of the championships. And God willing, if we're healthy and we're fit, we can do something in Paris and catch up for the World Championships.
Sounds good to me.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.